everything in life has unintended consequences, and diversity, equity, and inclusion is no different. In some instances, we see men acting resentful as we talk more and more about this particular issue, and trying to move women forward to give them more opportunities, whether that is in the workplace, in the home environment, but anywhere. We can't be so naive as to think that this doesn't happen. I have seen and heard it over and over again. Well-educated men who have passed comment on why they didn't get a promotion, but their female colleague did, or why a woman got the job. I've heard them say that, of course, all organizations now want to be recognized as being socially aware. So, of course, they hired a woman. So if ultimately we want and need men to step up, to be visible allies and advocates for gender equity, to not be embarrassed in doing so for fear that they're rocking the boat or being seen as weak, that they're not one of the boys, we really need to break down those stereotypes. There are societal norms that create expectations for both men and women. It shouldn't be an us versus them scenario. If parental leave is acceptable for women, it has to be acceptable for men as well. If more feminine leadership styles are to be appreciated in the workplace, then it has to be acceptable as well for men to be seen as more vulnerable, to be more open, to be more willing to help creative, inclusive workplaces, without, again, them being seen as too soft. Another unintended consequence of DEI is that sometimes younger women feel intimidated by all of those that we are already setting up and putting on pedestals or lauding or setting up as role models. I've spoken to very, very many women who feel like when they go to work every day, they actually have to wear a power mask just to enter the boardroom or to go on the field site, just to be accepted or to survive mentally in the workplace. That is a very lonely place for a woman to be. We need absolutely to share stories about successful women. I have heard from many women who have said that they've only gone into an industry or an area because they know a woman working in that area. They have an aunt or a friend or a cousin or somebody who has been a role model for them. So telling stories and lauding women who are doing wonderful jobs is, we do not want to move away from that. But at the same time, we want to ensure that women are not intimidated by those stories. One of the other things that is really important is that it's very easy to think of all women as homogenous, as we're all experiencing the exact same issue, the same challenges, the same difficulties, and absolutely a lot of that would be valid. But at the same time, everybody comes to this with their different experiences of their color, for example. If they're Black, if they're Indigenous, if they're from a different country, their culture, the influences that they had. We all have different scenarios that come together to make up who we are as individuals. And I think it's really, really important that we recognize that when we talk about gender equity, we're not just throwing all women together. We all have our different experiences, and we need to recognize that amongst each other at the same time. I had an interesting experience myself once when I had an employee who I sent to an all-female conference, thinking that she would love this. This would be a great experience for her. There's not many conferences in our industry where it's just women. And when she came back and I asked her how much, did she enjoy it? She said, yes, she did very much. But there's only 3 Black women actually at the conference. And I had never even thought of that event from that perspective. I just thought, oh, isn't this great? We're getting all the women together to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, and supporting each other. And I didn't even recognize that there was a real lack of diversity, equity, and inclusion, even within that group of women. Some of the other unintended consequences of diversity, equity, and inclusion is the issue of what I would call jargon, to be quite honest, and certain buzzwords becoming exactly that, buzzwords for a certain period of time. And I know I've talked to a number of women myself over the last few weeks, and we all have words that we do not like to hear, the jargon. I personally dislike intensely the word authentic. And I know that a lot of people will just go gasp and get really frustrated with me in regards to that. Or for others, the word empowerment, or your whole self are all words that do not really describe how they view DEI or moving forward on this discussion. I think we have to be really careful how we use words. At the end of the day, we're all on the same side. Ultimately, we want to address gender equity, but we need to look at the unintended consequences of not being able to speak to one another frankly, and not to be able to disagree with each other. It is okay to have different viewpoints as to how we actually get there at the end of the day. It's okay to challenge each other's perspectives. That's actually healthy. Another challenge is the fact that many women who have been successful or who are successful and who are now in a position of power and influence find themselves not wanting to be visibly seen as supporting other women. And whether that is a concern about their own reputation, that they don't seem to be, that they're concerned that their colleagues, especially their male colleagues, will see them as pushing the gender equity issue as part of a self-interest agenda. That is concerning. Why are women actually going down the avenue where they don't see themselves, they do not want to support other women? I have to say, even in my own role, and I talk about DEI and gender equity over and over again, I've done a ton of work on this for over a decade, and I still get men raising their eyes when I go in to talk about gender equity in a room. And I've had men push back and say, Michelle, are you still talking about the need for gender equity? Haven't women got it all at this stage? Why do you still need to talk about it? And really, we need to push back against that. We need to educate. We need to talk about why it's so important, and just look at the numbers. And I'm not talking about the business case. I keep seeing people still wanting to talk about the business case for gender equity, and I think we're beyond that at this stage. I think we really need to stop just talking about it and action, and move from talk to action on this. And women have to be part of this. We talk about men all the time and trying to get men to be allies and get men to speak up, and call out bias, for example, when they see it, and to become champions of change, as it were. But we also need women to be confident enough to say, this is still taking place, we need to change it, and not to be embarrassed as to why they're saying that or being vocal about that. They need to champion gender equity every single bit as much as our male allies or champions actually do.